but you, and I will bless your name. Bless your name, and I will bless your name forevermore. It is to you, it is to you I give the glory. It is to you I give the praise. For you have done so much for me, and I will bless your holy name. It is to you, Holy Father, no one else but you, and I will bless your name. Bless your name, and I will bless your name forevermore.
Bless the Lord. Bless the Lord. Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you for your warm welcome. Thank you for inviting me here to do this talk today, healing relationships, healing the church. And I'm really excited to share with you. And I do believe that there is a lot here to unpack, a lot to learn. I hope you came with an open mind. I hope you have your pen and papers ready. If you don't, I hope you have your notes section of your phone ready so you can start making notes. And this is notes that you probably will be going back to later. So active listening is welcome today. I must tell you, I don't think this was in my introduction, that before I used to be a teacher, so I don't think that was mentioned. So if I do put on my teacher voice, ask some questions, ask for hands up, you will understand where that context is coming from. So why am I qualified to speak to you about relationship? Well, I'm going to tell you my business. Do you want to hear my business? Amen. Somebody says amen. Luke 16, verse 19, chapter 19 to 31. You don't need to find it. But it tells us the story of a rich man who was unkind to a beggar named Lazarus. And it so happened that when the rich man died, he went into this place of torment. And he looked afar off. And he saw he saw Lazarus there being comforted. And he said the rich man said to Abram, could you send Lazarus to my father's house? Because I have 5 brothers. And let him tell them of the torment that I am going through. So my question for you is, if Lazarus or the rich man returned and warned you about some of the signs of what could happen in a relationship and how to make it better after experiencing it, would you change your mind? Would you change course? Today, I want you to think of me as that certain rich man, that person who has experienced torment, that person who, it's not because my relationship is great, but it's probably because my relationship isn't, which has pushed me to look for answers. And in looking for answers, it's as if the veil has been lifted, the scale have been lifted off my eyes. And the things that I've learned, I want to share with you. Here is another analogy. At the moment, there are a lot of knife crimes in London. And lots of youth being involved in that. Now, who do you think these youth will listen to if someone came and to tell them about the risk and, what can happen to them if they continue in this lifestyle? Would it be an outstanding citizen who has never committed a crime? Or would it be the person who has been imprisoned, who has felt the torment, the shame, and the difficulties of that? Who do you think they will listen to? The person who has the experience. Again, I want to say that I am the person who has experienced these negativities in a relationship. And therefore, that is what I think qualifies me to speak. Not because things are perfect. The final example I will share is that the Bible talks that women ought to teach, the older women are to teach the younger people in the church. So if there are any young person here today, no longer can you say the church isn't teaching you, because this seminar has been designed for that purpose. So are you ready for this? If you're ready for this, let me hear you shout, Lord, change me. And if you are online, can you type LCM if you are ready to hear what we have to say today? So to get us started, we're going to get started with a question, a true or false question. Listen carefully. You ready? Maintaining positive relationships with each other, meaning your family, your friends and neighbors, maintaining positive relationships with each other is equally as important as our salvation and relationship with God. I'll repeat. Maintaining a positive relationship with each other is equally as important as our salvation and relationship with God. If that is true, I want to see you stand. If you think it's false, sit and wave your arms. Right, we have two people who thinks that is false. Okay, the rest of you think it's true. And those online, please type in true or false. The sister read today, and I think I've asked them to look at 1 John. We'll start with Matthew 5:24. Matthew 5:24. What does that say? Matthew 5:24. It says that when you come to pray, if you have a heart against another, what should you do? Leave your gift. So that means that relationship, that salvation is hinged closely to your relationship with others. And then the next one I'll share with you is 1 John 4:7-8. We read that earlier, and 1 John 4:11-12 and 20-21, which talks about the love of God. And how can you say that you love me when here you don't love each other? So I'm going to put to you that I believe that that statement is true, that it is equally as important, because if that relationship isn't there with each other, then it means, sorry to say, we're not going anywhere. So in my research today, what's make this seminar different from every others is that I'm going to present to you some scientific studies, scientific research that is done by a gentleman called John Gottman. So if you're making notes, you can write the name down, John Gottman. And he has research. He actually created a love lab. And in this love lab, he would get couples, and they were able to simulate having a conversation as natural as possible. They would be hooked up to get their blood pressure done, their heart rates, and just looking at their physiological function while they were involved in conversation with each other. So he teamed up with other scientists, and they were able to prove that relationship satisfaction is linked to our physiological response. So how satisfied we are in a relationship, Raphael, go to Daddy. Don't do that at the front. How satisfied we are in a relationship is related to your blood pressure, your heart rate, and we're going to dig deeper into that. So he got hundreds of couples from 1993 onwards, and he looked at this. Why did he do it? The goal was to learn how people manage successful and long-term relationship. So what does this all mean for you? Luckily, I don't need to get you into a love lab. Some of you are saying, thank you. I don't need to get your blood pressure done when you're having an argument. I don't need to check your heart rate in order to come up with answers, because he's already done the research. And then what I want to do is to share what was found in that research. So are you ready to hear what has been found? If you are, let me hear you shout, Lord, change me. If you're online, type LCM. I'll take a question now if there's any question about what I've said so far about the methodology about the Love Lab. If not, we'll move on. So in the Love Lab, the idea was that if people are talking about real issues in their life, you may think that if a camera is in front of you, electrodes are attached to your head, your blood pressure machine is on, someone's measuring your heart rate, that it would be fake. Like you wouldn't be expressing, it wouldn't be natural. But you and I both know that when something is close to our heart, even if all these things are there, they were still able to simulate natural conversation, even though these other external factors were there. Yeah, so thank you for that question. So if you remember when we sent the posters out, the first question that was on the list was, what makes relationship works? The answer I'm going to give today is going to be very different from what you've done or read or heard before. So listen carefully and make notes. What makes relationship works? Conflict, a key to happiness. One lesson learned from the research study is that a lasting marriage results from a couple's ability to resolve the conflict that are inevitable in any relationship. So what makes relationship work? One answer is how we resolve the conflict. How you and your partner resolve the conflict. And remember, we're talking about relationship here. This study was done on marriage couple. But I think the lessons learned can be extended to the relationship between a mother and a daughter, between fathers and sons, between your siblings, between your parents. Because what it is saying is that for the relationship to work, it's about how you resolve the conflict. And in his study, and I'm going to ask you to guess this, what percentage, answer this question for me, in a marriage, whether it be 10 years, 1 year, 20 years, what percentage of the conflict you think will be resolved over the years? 5%, 3%? Somebody says 25, right? It's over 69. So 69% of conflict in relationship does not get resolved. Even in lasting marriages that are there for the long haul. Because it means that what you're arguing about in 1980, it's likely that it's the same issues you'll be arguing about in 2000. And it's going to be the same issues you're arguing about in 2020 if you last. Because these issues are actually issues that creates based on your personality. And so I found that number, I was blown away when I realized that it was 69% of conflict does not get resolved. So how does it work then? Like I say, for things to last, it's about how the conflict is reduced, is resolved. So sometimes you hear people say, well, we are good together, we never fight. That doesn't mean, actually, that the relationship is good. Because what's happening is that it is in the conflict and how you resolve these conflicts. Does it mean that you should go stir up conflict? Of course not. They will come naturally. So conflicts will come naturally, but how it is resolved is what's going to determine the longevity of that relationship. And so there are three styles of problem solving in a healthy marriage. 3 problem solving styles. Anyone already knows what these 3 problem solving styles are? Communication, that's the whole package is in communication. Pardon? Apology. Okay. So that's going to be included in each style. So whichever style you're going to use, you would need to communicate, you'd need to apologize. I'll take one other point or 2 points. Someone that can listen and understanding. Active listening. Okay. So the 3 styles that I'm going to tell you about is style number 1, validating. So couples compromise in the validating relationship. Couples compromise often, calmly work out their problems to mutual satisfaction as they arise. So if the problem comes up, they'll talk about it, they'll compromise, and they'll find a resolution. So that's the validating style. You with me? The second style is the conflict avoidant. So there are some people who don't like conflict at all. And so if something presents itself, what they would do is try to avoid talking about it. So in the conflict avoiding marriage, these couples agree to disagree. So they don't really address what's happening. They agree to disagree. And they rarely confront their differences head on. So the first one was validating. The second was conflict avoidant. And then the third one is the volatile marriages. And volatile marriages where you erupt, something happen, and this type of, how when a conflict arises, they're more likely to blaze up like a fire. And these kind of people are probably consider themselves more passionate. So if there's an issue arise, they're more passionate. Now, most of us would think that only the first style works in marriage. Validating. But according to the research that was done, all 3 styles can lead to a healthy relationship. And your next question is going to be asking is, how? How is that possible? And I will give you the answer. So, if we go to one of the amazing research studies found, the reason all 3 style works is because he has found a formula. This is a formula where it shows that if we follow this formula, you can have longevity in all your relationships. Are you ready to find out what it is? Are you ready to find out what it is? Then shout, Lord, change me. Online type LCM. Okay. So the formula states that the formula is 5-to-1. Can you say that? 5-to-1. It means that in your interactions with each other, there needs to be at least 5 positive interactions to a negative 1. 5 positive interactions to a negative 1. So that's the formula. And the research has shown that if within 15 minutes of meeting a couple, the research has shown to 90% accuracy, they can tell whether this relationship is going to last or fail. A 90% accuracy. And that all comes back to this formula, 5-to-1. 5 positivity to 1 negativity. Any questions regarding that so far? So one of the questions that was asked, Kevin asked me when I shared this question, like, what does the 5 positivity mean? Like, what would that include? Think about when you were dating. What were some of the positive things that you did? Respect each other. You complimented each other. You say thank you. You were polite to each other. You show interest in what the other person was doing. You were affectionate, touching. You show you cared in your language. You were appreciative. You show concern. You were empathetic. You were accepting. You probably joke around a bit. You share your joy. You spend time together. So those were the positivity at the beginning that would make this relationship blossom. Yes. I can't hear you, sorry. Is that a good or a positive thing? So she's saying that sometimes when you're in love, is that correct? Yeah. At the beginning of the relationship, you cannot even eat. Cannot even eat. So, this is why at the beginning it is so full. Now, there is a myth, and I must say I had signed up to that myth, that when you are in a relationship, you would think that this rich soil of positivity that you came in with, it's gonna last. So let's say you got married at 20, and let's say you die at the age of 100, and both of you are 20 years old, got married, both of you, let's say, die. So for the next 80 years, this rich positivity that's there at the start, the affectionate, the showing kindness, the showing interest, that's meant to carry you through for the next 80 years. But I'm here to tell you that that's a myth. There is something called marital entropy. Any scientist in here knows what the word entropy means? Entropy. Yes, sister. No. Good for trying, though. So you get gold star for trying. So she said togetherness, connectingness. So entropy means disorder. Entropy means disorder. So just like how you have the law of gravity, that anything you throw up is going to come down, there is the law of entropy, that wherever there is order, you don't need to do anything. Disorder will come. Think about you clean a house. You leave it. You didn't touch anything. You went for holiday. You came back. Do you think the house is still going to be spotless? No. So things in life naturally move to a process of disorder. And many of us, when we start a relationship, and the natural thing for any relationship is to move to disorder, it now starts becoming difficult. I don't know if it's the media or what, but we begin to think that because there is problem present, it's a sign that this isn't working. But that's a myth. There will become problems. Conflict will arise. But I am here to equip you with the tools as to how to handle these conflicts. Remember the first question that we had asked? How can we improve relationship? And it's to handle our conflicts better. Okay? So there are some basic marital nutrients, and I think our sister mentioned one of these already. So in a study of long-term marriages, they recruited couples from a wide range of backgrounds who had been married for 20 to 40 years to the same partner. Despite the widespread differences in occupation, lifestyle, and details of their day-to-day, no matter what style of marriage conflict they had, whether it was validating, being avoidant, or being volatile, whichever style, there were two basic ingredients that were found. And can we repeat what they were? You told me one already.
Communication.
The one begin with R. Respect. And what's the second one? Two basic marital nutrients. Begins with L, 4 letters. Love. Okay? Love. So love and respect. These are the two basic nutrients. I'm going to I'd ask for a video to be played, and we're going to look at this video now, and then you're going to tell me How is respect demonstrated in this video clip? And for a happy marriage, they show affection. What did you observe in this? Okay, let's we have the video. While we're waiting for the video, I'll mention to you that one of the first things that goes in marriage is politeness. Politeness. So goes. One of the first things to go in marriage is politeness. Because you're so familiar with the person, you stop being polite. This reflects increased comfort, and this leads to you taking each other for granted. This leads to you just being rude to the person. And when the politeness goes, it's almost as if it pulls down on the respect. When it pulls down on respect, then this cycle of negativity starts. And you remember we say the magic formula is 5-to-1. So because you're now impolite, because you're not dealing with the conflicts properly, which side of the ratio is going to increase? The negative sides. And then the positive ones go down. Okay? Are we ready with the video?
Respect. Sometimes we work so hard to show it, but receive little in return. The question is, does it really have to be that way at home? We might need to change habits that we learned growing up. Or we may realize that we need to change our choice of entertainment. While it may not be easy, it is possible to cultivate the mutual respect we once had. A helpful principle was stated long ago in the Bible. Just as you want others to do to you, do the same way to them. Husbands especially need to feel respected. But wives also need to feel valued, loved, and heard by their husbands. If we start by doing things that show we honor our mate, we'll create an atmosphere where respect can grow. Always remember to consider how your words will affect your mate. Whether in public or even in private. If you must correct a matter, wait until you are alone. Use a kind tone and gentle speech. Even when you disagree, keep showing that you value your mate's opinion. Think about everything your spouse does. Both the big things and the little things. To take good care of your family. Try not to focus on your mate's flaws. Commend more than you criticize. And tell your mate every day something specific you appreciate about them. Peace is the beautiful result when both husband and wife show respect to the person who deserves it most, one another. Here are 3 questions for you to discuss that can help to build respect in your marriage. This is simply a chance to openly express how each of you feels. Be ready to listen and willing to change. So, if it's convenient, pause this video now and really talk.
Amen. Any comments on that? Any comments? Lord, change me. So much shouted. Lord, change me. Any part of the video spoke to you? Can I get some participation? Hold your hand up, and Brother Fontaine. So we have Jackie here at the front. No, you put your hand up, didn't you?
Yeah.
So, no, I meant just take the mic. I was telling him that to give you the mic, that's all.
Yeah, what
It's not on, is it? I can't hear you.
It is on. 1 to 1 2. It's not being turned up. It's on. Anyone in the booth? 1 to 1 2.
Use mine in the meantime.
Yeah, I'll take it then.
with regards to the study, you know, you could be up like working late at night and things like that, and you know, not be appreciated. It's like huffing and puffing because you're not in the bed, or you're not, do you know what I mean? Instead of coming and saying, you know, oh, you're doing a good thing there, do you want anything, can I do anything for you? And yeah, that sort of thing.
Amen, amen. So it's a cycle of negativity that we talk about. Try and see if we can reduce that cycle of negativity and more about positivity. The next video that I'm going to show you, so what was that?
1 to 1 2.
Oh, okay.
No, what I wanted to say in looking at that video, what's really important in terms of relationships and when conflicts happens in marriages, that we got to be careful about the children, because behaviours learn. And what we saw in that clipping was that little boy, you know, going like that, yeah, to his little teddy bear, basically, you know, kind of role modelling, yeah, what is happening inside of his home. And that's a lot of stuff that, you know, teachers see at school, hence the referrals come in. So just be mindful around when, you know, when you've got children around, basically. It's a big thing.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. So the next video we're going to look at will give us some ideas about that ratio. So in the first half of the video, you can tell me what you think the ratio is. And in the second half of the video, you can tell me what that ratio is. Are we ready for the next video?
As married couples, most of us have been there. The day-to-day pace of life, work, distractions can cause us to draw away from our mate emotionally. We begin to talk less. distance ourselves. We may feel unappreciated. And even become cold or unkind. Even our desire for intimacy and affection may cool. We may go from loving and passionate to platonic roommates. What can we do to avoid this? An excellent principle we can apply is found at Acts 20:35. There is more happiness in giving than there is in receiving. But how can we know what to give? What actions to take so our mate feels our love and affection? The best way to know is simply to ask, what does our mate need? Some feel loved when they are actively listened to, or hear warm expressions of appreciation. For others, it's expressions of love shown through touch or simply quality time. Others find that helping them with chores and sharing the workload at home makes them feel cherished. But whatever the discussion reveals, and regardless of our mate's imperfections, we want to do what we can to make them feel loved and cared for through the actions they appreciate. Yes, if we each do all we can to show unselfish love, genuine affection will follow. And this is just one of many secrets to a happy marriage. So now, why not just take a moment, pause the video, and ask each other these 3 questions. Remember, share your honest feelings, and when listening, don't be defensive. This is simply a chance to openly express how each of you feels. So pause your video now and really talk.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for the media team for showing us those 2 wonderful videos. Anything from that video spoke to you want to share? When in the first half of the video, what do you think the ratio was? High in the negative side. Okay, and then in the second half of the video, what happened? High in the positive side. What did they do differently? Did they go on a 12-week course away somewhere? Just the simple things. So when we say the ratio 5-to-1, we're not expecting you to buy each other a Mercedes. Somebody says, why not? You know, we're not expecting you to plan an expensive romantic vacation in Paris. Why not? Okay. But the simple things can shift that from the negativity to positivity. Yes, Sister Pat?
1, 2. One, two.
I was thinking about people that were not living so close together and how that would apply. I know it's about marriage, that particular video, but like friendships and
Yeah, so she's saying, how would it apply if the relationship, they were further apart? And like I said, everything we're talking about here is not just about marriage, but your friendship, if you wanted to, make that work. And I think the question, they asked 3 wonderful questions there, where they said, talk to each other. What do you like? There's a very good book called 5 Love Languages. And it's not just about marriage. It can be with your children, understanding if you have children far away or even near, understanding how they respond. And if you know what their love language is, even if it's physical touch, it means that you're going to make more effort to go and visit and see them. If it's words of appreciation, when they're on the phone, you're talking to them, then you show some appreciation, with your words. If it's gifts, then that's very easy. Log into Amazon and start making your orders. So there are ways, if you put some effort into trying to make it work. Because as I said before, it is a myth that any friendship, any relationship is just going to just prolong without each person doing something to create more positivity in that interaction. So now we're moving on to the 3rd objective. So, okay, we'll take one other point and then we'll move to the 3rd objective.
Being a Christian, one should always get lessons on being married before you go into the marriage. So it sort of gives you skills.
Yeah, so she's saying being a Christian, one should get lessons on marriage, so it gives you skills. That is true, and I think with our counseling ministry, that's in the Church of God Seventh Day, that's something we're working on. I know when I was getting married, I went to the Seventh Day Adventist, and I did that there. Was it useful? Was it helpful? I suppose so. But I think what I'm trying to explain to you is that a lot of the myths that I had, those weren't addressed. So my thought that if we were struggling to solve a problem, like that's a sign that this isn't working out, maybe you should go one way, I should go another. I know we're Christians and we probably think we should stay together, but remember that the divorce rate in the church is 50%, and the divorce rate in the world is also 50%. So being a Christian, the research has shown, doesn't mean that we're not getting divorced, whether or not your church believes in divorce. So learning the skills and learning the tools, and before marriage, before you even think about marriage, understanding some of these concepts means that you enter it without any false expectations that neither of you can live up to. So the 3rd objectives was the 4 horsemen of apocalypse, the warning signs. 4 horsemen of apocalypse, warning signs. I'll say that again. 4 horsemen of apocalypse, warning sign. And I think this researcher, John Gottman, and for those of you who came in late, I'm presenting a research study done by John Gottman, where he got many couples together in a love lab, studied them over years, and he has found some useful tips as to how to have longevity in your relationship. So I think he based these warning signs based on probably revelation and the horses that he probably saw. So what are these warning signs? So warning signs are there to tell you, take a look. You're moving towards the negativity rather than the positivity. And my job here today is to open up your eyes to these warning signs. So when you see them in your interactions and in your relationships, it doesn't build up years and years with you overlooking them. But what can happen, you can address them early. And when you address them early, then it means you're most likely to have longevity. So, the first warning sign is criticism. The first warning sign is criticism. Thank you very much. So I'm going to tell you a story about Eric and Pamela. So Eric and Pamela are newlyweds. And in this relationship, when they just got married, they didn't have a lot of money. So what they'd done, they had a small wedding, and they made the decision that they were going to save towards owning their first home together. So they're living in rented accommodation, they're both working, they're both newlyweds, but their plan was, we want our own place. Let us save our money so we can own our own property. So Eric came home, and here was Pamela. And Pamela said, why did you buy those weights when you know I've been denying myself a new scarf all winter? You always do that. You just think about yourself and your needs. I always have to deny myself things because you spend so much. You just don't care, right? So this is how Pamela has addressed Eric. And how do you feel that discussion is going to go? Do you think Eric is going to say after that, you're right. You're onto something. So the way how it is approached, the way how she phrased her discomfort, her complaint, she dressed it up in a package called criticism. Now, there is a difference between complaining and criticism. So a complaint talks about the specific issue. Did you notice in that statement she was using words like always? Even though the issue is about the weights that he bought. She made complaint about you just don't care, a generalized statement. So when you use generalized statement and you use always and you never, those are criticism. A complaint is talking about what is specifically happened, and a complaint usually starts with I. So how can she phrase this so it's a complaint rather than criticism? She could say something like, I feel like we're not working together towards the same goal when I see you buy the weights. And I feel like I'm trying my best, but this time, seeing this weight, this is how it makes me feel. So a complaint usually starts with the I, how it's affecting you. Because we are living in a time where we have to share how we feel. While a criticism usually begins with the word you. You did this, you did that. And it's almost like the person may not be pointing a finger at you, but when they go, you did, you should, you feel that wagging finger in your face. And what it does, it just makes you become defensive, and it makes you want to now start an argument, as opposed to if you present it as a complaint, then that would lead to you having a discussion about it. So remember, the first question I asked was how to improve relationship. You remember the answer we gave? We said about conflict, happiness in marriage, that it's about how you solve the conflict. So there is the conflict presented about him buying the weights, but we can have two different approaches. One's going to lead to a communication that's going to be beneficial, while one's just going to lead to an argument. Okay? So Eric would probably Eric, criticism involves an attack on someone's personality or character rather than a behavior, usually with a blame. How would Eric respond? He criticized her too. So this is Eric's response. Why does she have to be so negative? Why did she have to spend so much time chastising me for minor purchases instead of praising me for my all-round thriftiness? He thought she was being the type of person who would never have anything nice to say, who just wanted to give him a hard time. Again, you see the generalization in how he's thinking? So expressing anger and a disagreement and airing complaint, though they are unpleasant, they should happen. They should happen, but make sure we're doing a complaint rather than a criticism. Move away from always, you never, you see the person as this negative, but speak about the specific issue. Okay? Right. So we're going to move on now to talking about some other forms of criticism. So here in these other forms of criticism, I'll give you some example. And you tell me if this is a criticism or complaint. Okay? Right. Ready. We don't go out as much as I'd like to. Okay? Maybe if I give you the next one, you'll get it. The other one to it is, you never take me anywhere. So that one's criticism. But listen to the first one. We don't go out as much as I'd like to. That's a complaint. Because this person probably wants to go out some more. So this opens the floor now for him to say, we don't go out as much as I like to. You can now discuss, okay, so how often would you like to go? Where would you like to go? But if you start the conversation by saying, you never take me anywhere, it's like an attack. Like, where do you start? Of course I took you to the cinema, 3 years ago and watched Batman. As long as you can find something to prove that statement, you never take me anywhere, it just feels like you're in the right. I'll give you another example, and you can tell me which one it is, okay? It upsets me when I come home and there were dirty dishes in the sink. This morning we agreed that you would wash them. Okay, most of you are saying complaint. Here, this is the alternative. What did Chester say? Then dear from morning. What is that? That's a criticism. Okay, so the criticism is, you left dirty dishes all over the kitchen again. You promised me you wouldn't. I just can't trust you, can I? Criticism, because it's an attack on the character and the person. You're not talking about this issue. So I think we know the difference between the two. You're all very good students. The second horseman is contempt. If you're making notes, the second horseman is contempt. Remember, we say that we're talking about the 4 horsemen, which are the warning signs. When you see yourself criticizing or you hear your partner criticizing, I want the red flag to go up in your head for you to think that, okay, maybe I need to change. You still need to talk about the issue, but I need to change the way how I'm saying it. So the second one is contempt. So we're still talking about Eric and Pamela. Remember them? The newlywed? Okay. So it's now their first anniversary. Congratulations, Eric and Pamela. But they still haven't solved their financial differences. Pamela was feeling disgusted with Eric. Why are you so irresponsible? You never pay attention to how much you spend. You are so selfish. Fed up and insulted, Eric responded, "Oh, shut up. You're just a stingy cheapskate. You don't know how to live. I don't know how I ended up with you anyway." Can you see what's different between this response and to the previous criticism? Pardon? I'm not hearing you.
There you go.
Tanisha.
Don't think I heard the previous criticism.
Oh, okay. All right. So we'll put the two together for you to get in. So what separates contempt from criticism is the intention to insult and psychologically abuse your partner. So fueling these contemptuous actions are negative thoughts about your partner. He or she is a fool. Negative cycle in your head, you're thinking it. He or she is disgusting. He or she is incompetent. He or she is stupid, a fool. He or she is a pig, a pepper pig. When you start having these negative thoughts going over in your head throughout the day, you walk in the kitchen like we saw in the video. The place was a mess. The whole kitchen area, said he's making a sandwich, but then he made a whole mess. The negative thoughts come in. He's a pig. Well, how did I ended up here anyways? That negative cycle. So the difference between criticism and contempt is that in contempt there is a insult being there. So you're not just saying you never take me anywhere, but then you throw in you're such a cheapskate. So the name calling. So in addition to the finger pointing, which is criticism, you now have the name calling. So common signs of concept is insult, name calling, hostile humor, body language, mockery. And we're going to talk about how to overcome them. Okay? But I'll run through the 4 horsemen first, and then we'll talk about how to overcome each one. The 3rd horseman is defensiveness. The 3rd horseman is defensiveness. The 3rd horseman is defensiveness. So once contempt has entered Eric and Pamela's home, their marriage went from bad to worse because of the name calling and the insult. And the 3rd horseman follows closely behind, which is defensiveness. When either of them acted contemptuously, the other responded defensively, which just made matters worse. Now they both feel victimized. Now the tricky thing about defensiveness is that you feel like you are the victim. You feel as if you have done no wrong. And so they're both constantly pleading innocently and is unwilling to take responsibility. So when you are going to say, as in the example that we used earlier, you never take me anywhere, you're such a cheapskate. The only way that this person feels as if they can respond is to try and defend themselves, defend their character. So we're no longer talking about the fact that we're not spending any time together and I'd like to go out some more, which was the complaint. But you're now in a position where you're defending. You're not, there's no listening, the conversation isn't moving forward, it now becomes a fight. And so that is the reason why defensiveness is so, when that shows up, it means that communication is truly broken down. So defensiveness is fundamentally an attempt to protect yourself and to ward off perceived danger. I'm going to give you some common forms of defensiveness. Denying responsibility. I thought you said you were going to take out the bin, but we agreed on that and it's still here today. Oh, well, it was raining and I didn't get to go to do it. You start providing excuses. Rather than opening up with, I take responsibility. Yes, I'm sorry about that. Making excuses, denying responsibility, rubber man, rubber you woman. So that one is, for example, rubber man, rubber woman. Rubber. So the idea is that you bounce on me and it stick on you. So I'll give you an example. You may say to someone, when you were supposed to pick up Jenny, your 4-year-old daughter, from school, and you say to your partner, I thought we agreed that you were meant to pick up Jenny from school today because we agreed that you should get him at 4 o'clock. I feel like with you not doing that, that is really irresponsible. Irresponsible? Talk about irresponsible. Last year, you left the oven on all day. You're no longer talking about Jenny and picking the fact that you didn't pick up, but it's almost like now you bounce it back onto the person. You're calling me irresponsible. Last year you left the stove on and went to work. But that's not what this discussion was meant to address. And when you have a conversation like that, you're not going to solve conflicts. You're not going to, remember we talked about how to improve your relationship is how you resolve conflicts. And these criticism, contempt, defensiveness, it builds that cycle of negativity, which means that you're no longer solving or trying to resolve the conflict, but rather you're moving towards negativity. Okay? So let's go to our fourth horseman. What was the first one? Criticism. What was the second one? Contempt. What was the third one? Defensiveness. So the fourth one now is stonewalling. Stonewalling. So Eric and Pamela were nearing rock bottom, exhausted and overwhelmed by Pamela's attack. Eric eventually stopped responding even defensively to her accusation. Their marriage went from being marred with poor communication to being virtually destroyed by none. So stonewalling is when you trying to have a conversation with someone and they've just shut you down. Before, they would at least argue, though in a negative way, criticizing, using contempt, the name calling, being defensive rather than listening and acting. But you feel as if everything, when you're trying to talk in this defensive way, you feel as if it's falling on deaf ears. So years and years of trying to communicate with these three horsemen in the communication, what happens? You get to a point where you just shut down. You feel there's absolutely no point talking about this. This isn't going anywhere at all. And so it means that when the person is talking to you, you're not even listening anymore. You're on your phone. Your body language is saying that you're not in the room. Now, the problem with stonewalling is that the person who is the stonewaller, I mean the one that's doing it, feels that he's being neutral. Well, you're not being neutral. You're making things worse. They do not seem to realize that stonewalling in itself is a powerful act. It conveys disapproval, icy distance, and smugness. It's very upsetting to speak to a stonewaller. And who do you think stonewall more, male or female? That was a rousing male. Yes, yes. The studies have shown that 85% of stonewallers are men. Yes, Ida said she knows it. 85% are stonewallers. So, listen, men tend to be more physiologically overwhelmed than women. What do I mean by that? When men are involved in a conversation or a confrontation, their pulse rate is higher. The brother took it out of my mouth. Their blood pressure is higher. And not only are they higher, but they stay elevated higher for a longer period of time. Until a damage is done. Well, let's hope the damage doesn't get done after this presentation. So, once the fourth horseman becomes a regular resident in a relationship, it takes a good deal of hard work and soul searching to save that relationship. Because there is a shutdown. There is no point even talking anymore. So, this cycle of negativity can create this cycle of discard, and it's hard to break through if you don't understand what is happening. So going back to Eric and Pamela, do you remember them? They're going through a tough time. They each perceive themselves as innocent victim. Because on the one hand, she's thinking, all I want to do is to save to buy us a house. The husband, Eric, is thinking, well, overall I'm saving. It shouldn't matter if I just go and buy some weights or, buy myself the odd treat every now and again. So each person feels that they are innocent. But what is making this relationship break down is how they are communicating. And the 4 horsemen, when they show up, if you don't recognize that these are the warning signs, then what's going to happen is that the cycle continues years after years after years after years. And then one stonewalling comes in. Imagine now you've shut down. You're no longer talking to each other. You start leading parallel lives where you're doing your thing, your partner is doing their own thing. There's no point even coming together. Yes, brother?
Yeah, I just want to ask, are those progressive steps? Does it start with the first horseman and then does it go to the 4th, or do they just happen in any order?
So they are given in order of least problematic. So the criticism, as is probably how we talk to our children all the time, isn't it? Boy, why are you so rude? You never do anything. I told you to wash the dishes, and you never listen to anything I say. But is it really true that they never listen? Rather than just talking about that one issue. So criticism is there. And what happens is that when that continues, it can lead to contempt. You now see your mother as a monster. Because every time your mother speaks to you, they always seem to just be criticizing what you're doing. They can't see that actually you did well in the football yesterday. You scored the goal. That didn't get brought up. But what got brought up was the fact that I left my dirty dish in the bedroom. So now you, in your mind, they now have contempt. When approached, what happens now is that if the son will start defending him, trying to defend himself. In trying to defend himself, what does children always say? You're not listening to me. Raphael said to him, Mommy, you're not listening. Because you feel as if he's trying to defend and the mother isn't listening. When you feel as if you're talking, and it's going nowhere, then the next step is stonewalling. He locks himself in the room. He doesn't come out to talk to parents. He doesn't come down for dinner. He waits until dinner, parents eat and goes up, then he goes down and have dinner. That relationship between the mother and the son is now broken. The cycle of negativity is there. Yeah? So stonewalling is probably far more problematic than criticism. Yeah? Okay. So your private thoughts become cast in stone. It's hardly surprising that what you think about someone often determines how you treat them. So if you have the cycle of negativity where you think that your partner is just out to get you, or your partner is secretly sadistic and just have this secret pleasure to see you squirm and always feel down, that's what's going on in your head. When he comes in or she comes in, what kind of communication you're going to have in the evening? I'll tell you 2 stories of Betty and Jane. So Betty, husband came home, and when he came home, he said, I thought my dinner would be on the table by now. Betty thought, oh dear, this is her mind thought. I think he must have had a bad day today. I wonder what could be going on for him to approach me like this. So she went, she made the dinner, she presented to him. There was no cycle of negativity in her head. Jane, on the other hand, her husband came and said the exact same thing. I thought my dinner would be on the table by now. She dressed back. She think, who does he think he's talking to? Jane is a Jamaican. She said, excuse me, Jane is a Jamaican. And because she was already having problems in her marriage, Because she was already having this cycle of negativity where she thinks he's this horrible human being whose only object in life is to set out to get him, she goes, here he goes again, trying to take another swing at me. But let me tell you, I have news for you. There is the pot, there is the stove, go make yourself dinner. Right? So whatever you think, those private thoughts, even if, the videos that we were watching, the partners weren't doing a lot of talking, isn't it? But in their body language, you could actually see what they were thinking in the first half, when I said think about the first half of the video. And if you're having these negative thoughts over and over and over being played, it's going to show up in your actions. Okay? So, I'm going to talk about one other point called flooding, and then we'll move to solutions. Okay? What is flooding? It's not what you think. It's not, at the moment we have this, is it the storm or Hurricane Raphael? That's causing a lot of flooding? No, that's not the one we're talking about. The worst consequence of negative inner scripts is that it can lead to flooding. When this occurs, you feel so overwhelmed by your partner's negativity and your own reactions that you experience system overload. You're swamped by distress and upset. You become extremely hostile and defensive or withdrawn. Once you're feeling this sort of out of control, constructive discussion is impossible. So flooding is when I don't know if somebody that you've always had this negative thought about, they do and say something to you and you just feel like that is the last straw. If that was said at another time, you wouldn't be flooded. But when you hear it, it's as if, as some people said, my blood boiled inside me. You feel so overwhelmed. You feel so distressed. So that's flooding. What happens in relationship when you have these 4 horsemen? Anyone remember the 4 horsemen? Criticism, contempt, defensiveness, stonewalling. When you have these 4 horsemen going on for months to years in your marriage, you develop chronic flooding. Where when you're in chronic flooding, your body's producing more adrenaline, more cortisol. Do you remember what that is? Fight or flight hormone. So imagine where you're now in a situation where your cortisol level is always high. It's going to affect your heart rate. It's going to affect your blood pressure. It's going to affect you mentally. There is a study done with 2 apes. One was an alpha ape. The other was beta. And as you know, in the animal kingdom, they don't usually mix them together or stay in the same cage. In this study, they kept them, I'll take your point in a second. In this study, they kept them in the same cage. Now the beta, every day, waking up to this alpha, his cortisol level was always high. What do you think happened to the beta after a few months? It aged quickly, and it became more ill at a shorter space of time. And the research study has shown, and I hope this will motivate many of us to think about our own relationships and the cycle of negativity and the 4 horsemen. If it is not addressed, it is the men in the relationship who suffer health-wise more than the female. Female, we're a little bit more resilient and have a shorter lifespan. So if you love your partner at all, it is worth thinking about how you communicate, how you're resolving the issues. In our case with Eric and Pamela, both of them seem right in what they were looking for. He wanted a little bit of peace, to just buy himself a few things every now and again. She feels as if we need to save for this. But because of how they have dealt with it, now it's affecting their health. Tanisha?
I was just saying for those who probably didn't know, to explain what alpha and beta is.
Alpha is sort of the stronger, more powerful person or animal in the pack. Somebody goes, yes. And the beta one, they're more like the followers. They take order. So thank you for clarifying that. All right. Okay. So that's what chronic flooding and flooding is. How do we stop this? The antidote to flooding is to practice soothing yourself and your mate. Try to see your partner's tone or attack as an underliner, a way of emphasizing something rather than a personal attack. And most of us, when we're in this situation, you feel that it's a personal attack. So as soon as they open their mouth, if you're in that chronic flooding state, where everything they say, you think of it almost like it's a literal bear jumping out at you, how are you going to respond? You either run away or some of you jump back at it. We're going to fight this one out. And sometimes we may find ourselves in that state. So we're going to move to I think we're doing well for timing. We're going to now move to the 4 keys to improving your marriage. So I've identified the problems, and now we're moving into solution. Okay? So these are the four keys, how to improve. The good news is you don't need to take a 12-month course, okay, on how to improve. You don't need to, as we were saying before, fly off to Paris and spend 3 weeks together to solve the problem. And Brother Chester said, why not, earlier. So I'm going to tell you how you can do this. Okay. So the first one, so we're talking about the four keys to improving your marriage. The first one is learn how to calm yourself so flooding doesn't block your communication. So the first one is learn how to calm yourself so flooding doesn't block your communication. Because flooding is so destructive to a relationship, the first step is to recognize when you're being overwhelmed, recognize when things are just getting too much, and then make a deliberate effort to calm yourself. And I did mention to you, if you were to take your pulse, put your finger on your wrist and check your pulse. When you are overwhelmed, your pulse rate increase by 10% when you're flooded. So for women, heart rate is about 82 to 86. Men, heart rate is 72 to 76. So when you're flooded, what tends to happen is that would go up by another 7 to 10 points to 8 points, okay? So it's important to recognize that. And as I've mentioned before, that when you're in this state, you can't have a constructive discussion of resolving and finding solution. So the first step is to first recognize that you are there and then to calm yourself. How do you calm yourself? You can take a time out. Ask your partner respectfully. Explain that you're feeling overwhelmed and you're not in a state to have a constructive conversation at this point. So can we readdress this? You can, when you take your time out, pretend that you're somewhere else at your happy place. You can rewrite your inner script. I've been practicing this one. Rewrite your inner script. Take deep breath. Say things like, there's no need for me to take this personally. He's upset right now or she's upset right now, but it isn't a personal attack. This is a bad moment, but things aren't always like this. Rewrite that script. I'm upset now, but I love her or I love him. She has a lot of nice qualities, and there are lots of things I admire about her. So when you're calming down, you're saying these positive things rather than that negative cycle that I've mentioned before. And last one I'd mention here is right now I'm upset, but this is basically a good marriage or a good relationship. So rewriting that inner script is important. The second point, so we're talking about these keys to improving. The first one was calm yourself. Calm yourself. And somebody shouted, take time out. How you calm yourself is by taking time out. The next one is learn how to speak and listen non-defensively. Learn how to speak and listen non-defensively. So if you are a non-defensive listener, it will make the cycle of negativity less likely. Defensiveness is a two-way street. If you start speaking non-defensively, you will lessen your partner's need to be defensive. So, in your speech, you could, when you're listening, try, as we talk about, when somebody says, you never do this to me. You're never there for me when I needed you most. My natural approach would be to be defensive, to be in my fight and flight mode. I now have to learn to say, okay, the tone that is being used is to show that this thing is important for the person. And don't focus on the never, but trying to understand what it is that needs to be discussed. The other thing about that you can do when in a non-defensive listening is to praise and admire. So choose to have a positive mindset about your spouse. As the negativity into relationship swells, the positive is going to go down. And this leads towards being a critic, an abuser, or a stonewaller. Other things that you can do. Make a list of your partner's positive qualities. And you can review this list. When you are in a state that you think all these negative thoughts, look at photos of your happy time, your vacation together. And before I read this, actually was, when I'm in a bad mood, the last thing I'd want to be doing is to try to think about any positive times. And by not thinking about positive times and focusing on the negative, what your mind does, remember, and last year he did that too, almost like finding evidence to build up to it. And yesterday that happened, and almost like you're seeing this pattern of behavior over, because once the negative cycle starts, your brain is easy to pick up, and it's almost like it snowballs into that. But breaking the cycle of negativity would start to think about some good times you have together. You can talk appreciatively. So you say to your spouse, I really appreciate you cooking tonight. You really handle the contractor well. I love watching the way you play with Jenny, our daughter. You are a very considerate father. I know you've been stressed lately, and I admire the way you've been coping with it all. So try and be deliberate in giving praises. Non-defensive listening doesn't mean you need to agree with your partner. Did you hear that part? Non-defensive listening doesn't mean that you have to agree with your partner. But it's just when you are listening, you show that you are in the moment of listening. So, when we talked about it, so we talked the first one was, we're talking about the 4 keys. The first one was calming yourself. The second one was speak and listen non-defensively. And now the third one we're going to talk about is validation. If you can have, I'm going to explain what validation is, but I want to say this first so your ears perk up and you're really listening. If you can only practice validation when you leave here today, it will make your conversation with your colleagues at work, with your children, with your friends, with your partner, it will make it go a long way. You'll find that you're in a lot less conflict if you validate. So what is validation? Learning how to validate each other as well as your relationship. This is putting yourself in your partner's shoes, imagining his or her emotion, then letting them know that you understand how they feel. It's about taking responsibility. It's about apologizing. So, for example, your partner says to you, your husband says he gets upset when you don't call to say you are late. So your complaint from your husband is, when you don't call, when you're going to be late, and you don't call me to let me know, that makes me upset. One response is to be defensive. Well, it was only one time. Why do you need to take it that way? That's defensive, listening and speaking. But doing this in a non-defensive way and also showing validation, so this is the validation part, is to say, gee, I really made you upset, didn't I? So you first acknowledge where the person is at. It's almost like validation is building that bridge. If someone puts a complaint, I wish we would go out more often. I think we're not spending enough time together. Okay, I can see that spending time together is important to you. Tell me more. By putting that, in my head, I'm seeing like a plank across a gap. It means that you can walk across it together, rather than jumping in with being defensive. So that's why validation is so important. Do you need more motivation to validate? Research clearly shows that when you validate your spouse, you're helping to keep his blood pressure and heart rate down. In one study of newlyweds, it was found that the adrenaline secretions decrease during a conversation if a couple is validating and positive towards each other. Okay? And then the fourth one, so we said the first one was calming yourself. The second one was learn how to speak and listen non-defensively. The third one is validating. So if somebody comes to you with an issue, address the point of view that they're talking about before you give your opinion. And the fourth one is overlearning. Try and try again. When you were learning to drive a new car, did you get it right the first time? Did you just went in with your driver the driving instructor, sit in your seat, put the keys in and just went off? How many of you did that? How many times did you fail at driving before you actually became a driver? How many lessons did you have? How many times did you have to practice? Do you remember the thoughts that was going through your head? How is it possible that anybody learned to drive? I used to motivate myself, and this is probably, I couldn't share this, but I will anyways. I used to motivate myself to say, there was this gentleman that I know. He wasn't really a bright spark, and he could drive. And I would say to myself, if that person can drive, I surely can. Right? So that was what I was saying, because to me, you have to do this signal, mirror, signal, maneuver. While you're going up, you're turning, you have to change the gear. Then they're telling you to lift your foot off the clutch. I don't know. It just felt so insurmountable. And what I'm saying to you today may feel that way. Like this, it's all simple steps. And I'll say this point again. Most of you think you can't do it. But you talk to your colleagues well at work. You communicate with your colleagues well at work. You communicate with your bosses well at work. But why is it that once the door is open and you're home, suddenly you feel as if, oh, I need to go on a communication course? The difference is that there isn't that cycle of negativity at work. Most of you probably don't think your boss is this horrible human being who is trying to make your life difficult. So therefore, you can communicate well with him. And even so, even if you did think that, you haven't lost respect and politeness. So even if you're having negative thoughts, you still approach. When you're in your own home with this cycle of negativity, you seem to have lost the ability to communicate. I'm saying you already have all the skills. But my reason for standing here today is to show you how to break that cycle of negativity and to put some of these things in place. We could give other examples about when you throw a ball into the hoop, you don't get it right the first time, you needed practice. When you bake your first chocolate souffle, did it rise the first time? But it took, with time, with effort, be patient with yourself. And for some of this, it's going to take months, possibly years, rather than days to get it all right. But I say to you, if you choose, and that's why I ask you to make notes and go over this. For example, if you choose only to validate, choose only to listen non-defensively, that's 2 out of the many things I've said, that's going to bring your relationship to a place where you can communicate a little bit better. And then you can introduce all the others that I've mentioned. So, my bright students, what are the 4 keys to improve your relationship? Number 1, that's not a bright student. What are the 4 keys? Number 1, learn to calm yourself. So respect is important, but the 4 keys to improving your relationship, I think for that sister, respect is very important to her. So maybe that's your key. And what I'm sharing may just be what was found in this research, and maybe different ones of you may have say something differently. So my apologies for making that comment about not a bright student. Number 2 was listen and speak non-defensively. Number 3 was validation. And number 4 is overlearning. Try and try again. What did we say the 4 horsemen were? Criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. What did we say were the marital nutrients? The marital nutrients. Love and respect. Okay? Love and respect. And earlier we talked about 3 styles of conflict resolution. You'd have to be, do you remember what those 3 styles of conflict resolution were? Validating, the conflict avoidant, and the volatile. So with your partner, you can decide which one of these conflict resolution work for you, which one of these styles work for you. Okay, so my final point, and then we're closing, is strengthening the foundation. So that's our final point, and then we'll take it to a close. So love and respect in a couple's ability to resolve the conflict that are inevitable in any relationship. In strengthening the foundation, the emphasis is on love, respect, and a sense of value of your history together. So I'm going to run through like a shopping list of things that you can do. I don't expect you to write the whole list, but if you hear something that works for you, you jot that one down. Are you ready? Pick your battles carefully. You don't need to address every issue. Acknowledge your partner's viewpoint before expressing your own. That's validation. Acknowledging your partner's viewpoint before expressing your own. That is validation. If he says to you, I don't see somebody come up to you and said, bring up an issue to you where if you start off the conversation with you thinking there is no way that is a anybody could think that, you're going to come up against a block. But if you can somehow see in your head that that could be a point too, and you express that, don't just have it up here. Say, yeah, I see where you're coming from. That could be a point. I have a different point. Would you like me to share it? And you share your point. And then you have this opportunity where you're trying to convince each other of which point it is where you want to come to a compromise. But the acknowledging the other person's point of view is important. Moderate your emotions. Trust your partner. Enhance romance and affection. And if you don't know how to do that, there are books you can buy, 101 Ways to Be Romantic. Yes? I'm not going to go into different ways to do that, but there's, information out there for you. Don't tell your partner what you can't or won't do. Don't tell your partner what you can't or won't do. Instead, emphasize what you can and want to do. Can you pick up the grocery for me on your way from work? Rather than just jumping to, no, every time I leave the house, you're always trying to find something for me to do. Think about what you can do. I'm actually going to be leaving work at 5. The supermarket shuts at 4. Maybe the best thing I can do is stop at the, the petrol station and get that milk for you. Right? So you're sharing what you can do rather than just what you can't do. Offer sincere and positive appreciation. Express interest in your spouse. I've mentioned this before. Choose to be polite regardless of your spouse's actions. Be direct and honest. I hope no one is going to go away thinking that I'm saying you shouldn't talk about your issues. You must. But I'm saying to you, choose the words you use, and be aware of these 4 horsemen, that you're not speaking in that way to make them resident in your relationships. Be careful about teasing. Teasing is good, jokeful play. But sometimes you can go a bit too far. And if you realize you have put away pride and draw back, I can see that what I've said to you upset you. Let's talk about it. Reaffirm your basic beliefs about your relationship. Learn to level with your spouse when necessary. You can create suggestion boxes. Turn to others for support. And this other one, final one, is schedule discussions. I haven't implemented that in my relationship, but many of the platforms that I've been on have said that couples who schedule discussions, so they may say Sunday afternoon, 2 p.m., what we're going to discuss at this point, and they may come together and they can bring issues. That way, when you're showing up, each person shows up understanding that they're going to talk about probably some things that are difficult, so they show up with it in the mindset to have a positive, fruitful discussion. Sometimes when you just pounce on your partner when they're least expecting it, you can get this kind of cycle of negativity starting all over again. So a scheduled discussion is important. Any questions before I share my final words? Just scratching your head, Jackie?
Scheduling discussions, would date night come into that? Like, rather than make it, we'll have, a discussion 2 p.m. Sunday. Could you make it like a date, cook dinner?
Okay, so I think date night is a good idea, and it's a separate thing. I think the scheduling and discussion is to talk about hard things. So if you think about Eric and Pamela that we've been talking about all day, their scheduled discussion would be to air their viewpoint. And the validating in that discussion would be for Eric to say, see her point of view. To say something like, I can see that, us saving as much as possible is important for us to achieve our goal. She also needs to validate by seeing his, where he's coming from as a point of view. So at some point in that discussion, it would be appropriate for her to say, I can see how when you think about shopping for an extra chocolate or buying weights to do your exercise, it's important that we're not just saving money, but we're also enjoying the fruits of our labor as we go. So the idea is that if you can bridge that gap by at least acknowledging the person's point of view, then you can move into a discussion where you're convincing each other as to which way we want to take. We're going to do the stringent way, or we're going to just step back. That scarf you wanted, he could say, actually, if you did buy that scarf, it wouldn't be an issue for me. And I don't think we should just be saving without you not having a beautiful scarf around your neck, and throw in something, when we talk about positive appreciation, something about your lovely neck, or something like that. So, Pastor Everton?
The question I ask is it easy for you, the presenter, to validate?
Is it easy? So prior to me learning all these things 2 months ago, I wasn't aware of validation. I have introduced it into my relationships and talking. And you remember we talk about the flare up or the temperature that can sometimes be in how I express myself. Those have really come down. Like the number of arguments, the number of confrontation has really, really reduced simply by acknowledging another person's point of view before sharing your own. And when I say before sharing your own, it's not about start harping about your own, because then that just cancels out the validation. But taking that time to see where the person is coming from, understanding why that is so important to them, and expressing that in how you communicate. It's probably, for me, it was one of the easier ones to learn, and also it's also one of the easier ones for me to carry on doing. And that I have seen a lot of improvement in how an outcome of discussions by just introducing that one point. Why did you ask the question? Is there somewhere else you were going with it?
No, I think that, you see, it is said that because I'm a minister, then I should be perfect in this area. But I realize that if you are unlearned, then you cannot be. But when you discover that something is wrong, then you would seek for help. And I think that going forward, it's about every part of our lives now to be seeking for help, to be the perfect man that God wants you to be, or the perfect woman. And it's good. I feel that it is the best way for me to learn is to speak to someone who is honest enough to say, listen to me, I wasn't like that.
No, I wasn't. I can tell you that. Kevin will tell you that anyways. If you ask me, I definitely wasn't. But like I said, I'm in the driver's, I'm the learner driver at the moment. And I think I did say that at the beginning. I'm not presenting myself in any way, shape, or form. I am in the learner seat, and while I'm in the learner seat, I'm making loads of mistakes. It's not coming to me naturally. But I do believe that God did direct me to this. It started off as me watching a YouTube video on this. And then once I watched the YouTube video on Dr. John Gottman sharing his research, I went and bought the book. And I've read the book. And I just felt like, this is so good. Like, why didn't someone tell me this before? Even when I was single, not looking. If I had this information, I would have gone in more prepared. Why didn't somebody tell me when I just got married? Why didn't tell me when I was 5 years in? I just feel like I'm learning these tips that is useful. And like I said, it's not just for marriages. I'm a doctor. The patient comes in. They have a different point of view. If I say to them, Yes, I can see your point of view, how that would make sense to you. However, guidelines have shown that if we do it this way, we get result. By me just saying, I can see your point of view, acknowledging that what they're saying is not just some airy-fairy nonsense. Sometimes we have that somebody share a point, you go, no, me not see that. Like, how are you going to move the conversation forward? And then all the person's going to do now is to try and show it to you. And you're now trying to show them yours. And the both of you are trying to show. And nobody's listening. But by saying, okay, even if you're struggling to see it, you can say something like, I'm processing it right now. I'm trying to understand you. Explain yourself a bit more. Did you have another point you wanted to share? And then our sister, and then the final words.
Thank you very much, because Joan and I have 3 hours drive, so we'll be validated.
Hallelujah, hallelujah. If it was only meant for you two, then I think my job here is done. But what I do ask, though, is you come back and share about how this has impacted you and your relationship, because we are part of the Family Health and Counseling Ministry, and positive feedback to us let us want to do more or share more of this. Our sister, and then Sister Patricia, was it?
I'm just thinking, right, if all what you try to enlighten us about.
Yes.
How would you go about with the age gap between an older person?
Okay.
Yeah, and younger people, because we all have different cultures.
Yes.
You know, as an older person, and then
Yes.
for a younger person, and plus our cultures.
Yes. So the sister is asking, for how do we go about it for older people, the cultural differences? So you start where you are. You acknowledge where you are. So you remember Sister Merle said when I was telling you about Betty and Jane, and Sister Merle said Jane is a Jamaican. So I agree that some culture makes us more likely to be defensive in our approach. While if you're probably from another culture, again, I'm generalizing here, talking about like the Asian culture, because that's how it's portrayed in media, so I hope I don't offend any Asian person who may be watching online. If they do appear to be subtler in their approach. So maybe the area where they need to start from is stonewalling, because when they are having issues, they probably won't be defensive and talk about it, but they may shut down and just not share anything at all. So that person would be look at where you're at and start from there. And I think that what I'm sharing today can help with grandparents with their grandchildren. I don't think it is only for young people. If you are the one that's always criticizing, the name calling, you know, back home, again in Jamaica, where most of us are from, some of you grew up with parents who would call you dirty names and naughty names, and those things build up those cycle of negativity. So I think whatever age we're at, we can do it. Shall I do the final word and then we close? So final word. What makes this information that I've shared here today unique is that it's based on actual, intensive scientific study of hundreds of couples. My goal was to share what I've learned from this research about why some relationship fails and others thrive, and to show you how to use the wisdom gathered to save or improve your own union or relationships. Thank you for listening. I'll hand over back to Sister Jo.
Wonderful, wonderful. Can we give Dr. Nikisha a bigger round of applause, please? Because I think she's done absolutely amazing, absolutely amazing. And I think it's information and knowledge that we all need to enhance our relationships, both in our marriage, with our children, with our peers. Yes, it's really, really important that we utilize these sessions, yes, that the Family Health and Counseling Ministry are going to be putting on. And truly, I was just looking at the list there and I thought to myself, yes, I can see a lot of me in some of these. It's really quite good. And it's good to be honest. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes, I think, especially for those of us in church, we've grown up in church and, you know, we look at each other as, oh, they're the perfect couple, aren't they? They're just so wonderful. But the most beautiful thing about relationship is really about the honesty, yeah, and the sincerity. And I love the fact that Sister Nakisha was able to bring out the breaking the cycle, yeah, and the practicing of the 5-to-1 ratio. I think that's something I'm going to take away. I mean, normally I quickly go around and ask, well, what would you take away? If you had one thing that you had to take away, Sister Lara, from this session, what would that be?
Right. So the one thing that I would take away from here tonight. Okay. The one thing I'll take away from here tonight is most definitely the validation, because I noticed that in most of my relationships that I'm having out there with my friends, I'm actually losing friendships just because whenever time something happens and I sort of like bring it to my friends' attention, like, hey, sometimes not straight away, but after, and I would say, hey, you remember yesterday? You did say something and I didn't like what you says or something like that. I sort of bring it up. For some reason, I could see the expression on their face as though they don't want me to tell them about it, and then they just never speak to me again. So I'm thinking, like, what's going on? Am I not supposed to tell you? Like, you know? So I realized that a lot of people, I suppose that they're struggling where that is concerned. They want to do things, treat you anyhow, and you're not supposed to tell them. And the moment you tell them, they feel some type of way, which I don't know what type of way that is, because they never really express themselves. They just sort of go their way. So I'm thinking that, okay, well, I will forever be on this street where if you said something or done something that I don't like, then of course I'm going to express myself to you. And if you feel and if I've done something to you that you don't like, I would love for the person to also tell me, so that I can say, oh, I'm ever so sorry. I never meant to say that, or I never meant to say it that way, and I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. So that's what I want to happen. Those are the type of relationships that I want to be having with everyone that are in my life. I want to have healthy relationships with the people in my life. Thank you.
Well, as Christians, I think I've been through the same issue with family and friends. So what I've ended up doing is just praying on the situation, wishing them well, and by praying on it, it seemed to just have a good results instead of following it up or even beating up on yourself.
Ida, what did you learn from the session?
I don't plan it, but you know, I give God thanks. The validation was really the one that really stuck. You understand? When you are able to look at someone else and say, I do understand where you're coming from, it makes it changes the whole dynamics of everything, you know. And validation, if we do that, you know, relationships at church, at work, yard and abroad, you know, you're going to get there, and that's just it. Blessings.
Blessings to you too.
So you've got to give yourself a big round of applause, because you're all going to be taking away your little nuggets. This is just the beginning of many, many sessions that we're going to have. And as Sister Nakisha said, the older women must teach the younger women. I'm a lot older now, so I'd like to believe that I'm in a position of teaching, comforting and mothering and nurturing my babies over there. So we're going to all stand to our feet. Thank you all so much. Those of you that are on YouTube, thank you for your presence and for sharing with us today. I trust you all found this extremely beneficial and things that you will take away to enhance your relationship. I'm just going to ask our Pastor McLean just to come up now and just to close us in prayer. Amen.
Thank you Dr. Nikisha Robertson. I have learned much, and if you're on YouTube, wherever you are, I would invite you to make a link and make life better for all of us, and then I validate you and you validate me. Okay? Thanks. Let's bow our heads. Father, thank you for the information that has been downloaded today. Thank you, Lord, for giving your daughter the inspiration and leading her, Lord God, to educate so many of us online and in this place. Lord, I'm asking you that the information that we have received today, we will go away with it and we will work on ourselves, making our lives better for the kingdom of God and for the outer world that we are living in. Lord, I'm asking you, Father, that you will continue to give us strength and that your grace will be continually towards us. And may we come again to enjoy the information download within us. Thank you, Lord. Thank you. And thank you for listening, and thank you for hearing, and thank you for participating. Thanks.
Just a quick announcement. Now, Dr. Nikisha is available should anyone want her for booking at their local churches, events. Please feel free. She'll be able to take your number, give you her details. How's the best way to contact? Yeah. So you can either get her through myself, because my details are on the flyer, and I will pass on her details to you. So please continue to pray for the Family Health and Counselling Ministry. We've added the name in their health because the lovely Nikisha, Dr. Nikisha, has come on board with the Family and Counselling Ministry, and so as Sister Martha, who couldn't be here today. So please do continue to pray for us and watch this space because there's a lot happening. God bless you. Oh, and Brother Leroy, yes, Brother Leroy from Croydon, he's also on the Family and Health and Counselling Ministry. So let's continue to pray for us as God moves us along. Amen. God bless you.